Three, two, one. Welcome everyone to New Earth Light Brigade with Audrey Walters and Arkeem Ra. Today we have a very special guest, Greg Yawakia. Did I say that right, Greg?
Yeah, good enough. He'll
And
pass.
Greg is a very fascinating individual. He's been all around the world collecting ancient knowledge and reclaiming the ancient knowledge of his own people. He's a member, an elder of the Zuni tribe, and he's a healer, and he has his own YouTube channel as well. And yeah, he's just really a teacher. He has a lot of great knowledge that he's going to share with us today, and we are so blessed to have you here with us, Greg. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to come on your talk to your people of I guess what I'm trying to bring out. You know, uh, passing, as you say, passing the torch to me from. I want to try to carry that torch what Clifford started. Clifford Mahudi, late Clifford Mahudi. Because that's why I want to bring the message out because it needs to come out. You know, and good to meet you, Audrey. I mean, I uh, just am fascinated with what all y'all do because I've seen some of your podcasts and you're doing a great job. Just thought
Oh,
I'd
we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, we really so in my opinion, I think Audrey as well. I just think it's really important to recognize that a lot of this wisdom that we share, they use the word new a lot when people talk about it and categorize it, new age, new earth. Even on our own channel, we call it the New Earth Light Brigade because we do kind of have a world that we're living in that we need to transform and create something new, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, if you will, kind of thing. But at the same time, a big part of what the mission of reclaiming of building a better Earth is reclaiming our ancient knowledge and our lost knowledge. And you've educated yourself on that knowledge a lot. Both in the manner of the tribe you're from and the knowledge that's been passed down to you, but also going around the world and learning about the knowledge that other peoples have. Can you just maybe go into like just tell people your story, like how you learned everything you learned, and just kind of like how you see the common thread throughout Earth's history and stuff like that?
Okay, well, let me start off about myself. How I really got into this is that I started at a very young age that I don't even remember, and because uh, between birth and age of 7, I conquered death 3 times, and the first time was that when my mom and dad we're pinion pickers. I don't know if you ever heard of pine nuts. We're nut gatherers in back home in Zuni, and my mom and dad decided to go pinion picking. It was fall season, and I was asleep in the back of the car, and we got to a place, and they jumped out, went under a tree, started pinion picking, and I woke up. I woke up and I looked around, didn't see my mom and dad. I guess I jumped off on the other side, climbed out of the window, and took off. And I was lost in the woods for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I was lost in the wood for 2 weeks. And there was a sheep herder out there that found me. And when he found me, he, you know, said, "What are you doing out here?" And because I was too small to talk. And so he grabbed me and says, "I'm gonna take you home. You were given to me by the Creator." And because he didn't have any kids, he said, "You're given to me by the Creator." So he took me home, and because the search and rescue were out there looking for me. I was gone for 2 weeks, so they were out looking for me, and then they finally saw him carrying me back. So they tried to take me away. He says, "No, I gotta give it to him. He's my godson. I gotta give him back to the family, and let them know that he is my godson now." So he did that. A year later, or a couple years later, I was at the age of 3 when this happened. So 2 years later, I was age of 5. I started school, and in the school playground, we were playing King of the Slide. Jumped up on that slide and got kicked off, and I fell and I hit my head. And next thing I know, I was riding on the ambulance. I was sitting beside my avatar and went to the hospital, and the doctor said 318 time of death. You know, and I said, "Wow, what does that mean?" So when they covered me, and back then they had gurneys. This was back in the '60s. They had gurneys. So there was a paracord that was laying across the floor, and the guy that tried to push the gurney, ramped that paracord, I guess. And when he did, the gurney collapsed. When it collapsed, I woke up. And they looked at me and says, "Are you okay?" And I just woke up. But 4:30 that day, I walked out of the hospital all fine and dandy, nothing wrong with me, other than a little bump on my head from landing on my head. And then at the age of maybe 6 years, 6.5, something like that, it was a hot summer day. I was playing outside. My sister yelled at me to come take a bath because, that way I can cool off. She started my bath water. I jumped in the bathtub and it felt so good that I guess I fell asleep. The bath water kept running and my sister kept pounding on the door. Finally, she opened the door and looked in, and I was already under the water. And when I was under the water, rather than pulling me out, she runs across and goes to my grandma. And my grandma comes over and pulls me out. When she grabbed my arm, I woke up. So those are the 3 times that I conquered death. And so they told my godfather what had happened. And he said, "Okay, it's time to start training him." And they said, "He's too young. He's too young." But they said, "No, it's time. We can't afford them to try to get him." So that's where I started my uh, practice of being a native medicine practitioner. And they did not teach me any modalities. All they taught me was how to protect myself, how to cleanse myself, what each relic means and how it is used, and I what they just it wasn't really a forceful thing. Everything was just like, if it resonates with you, use it. If it doesn't, don't use it. So I had all kinds of elders like constantly training me 24/7, like, and I was constantly fasting, learning how to, you know, uh, take find out who I really am, my physical body, but I was in the spiritual realm also. So I learned all these modalities and from, I guess, the higher up, and so when I got it, they just taught me how to protect myself and everything. And so after that, you know, you know, when you're awake, you become an oddball. I didn't have any hardly friends. I had 2 good friends, and that was it. And I couldn't get along with the kids in school, or they didn't get along with me. And I was just an oddball, and so that was my life. So at the age of 14, I just decided I'm gonna venture out. I told my dad, "I'm gonna venture out." He said, "Promise me one thing." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You'll graduate high school." "Yes, Dad, I will." So in 1976, I left home. When at the age of 14, I left home and I went clear across the state. I lived in west side of New Mexico, went clear across the state to Clovis, New Mexico. And I started school over there. I found a place and everything, and that's where my home away from home started. And I keep telling the people, one day I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna take my position when I come back. One day. Hey, I'm in Pennsylvania now, so I haven't gone back yet. And so, you know, but I traveled. I went to Egypt. I went to Japan, studied Buddhism in Japan. In fact, I got my Gohansan during the World Peace Conference in 20 years ago. So I practiced Buddhism, learning about enlightenment and what they practice, which is good, that because that's basically our our third one, which is on a level of prayer, our conscious level is the third one, which is I do, which is mind over matter, learning how to use your air to, do all that. Then I went to Egypt, where I studied alchemy in 1984. I was in Egypt learning the Egyptian alchemy symbology, and it was just by accident because I was in the military back then, and we had to stop by Alexandria to because some crazy thing that was going on. So when we stopped at Alexandria, Egypt, we said, "Hey, you got this weekend off. You got Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. You can do whatever you want, but come back Sunday night." And so we said, "Okay." So first thing I said, "I'm going to the pyramids," and so I went. And the guy that I had, I got to know him pretty good, and he was an elderly man. And he says, "You know what?" He says, "I feel like I need to take you into the pyramid. It's a small hallways and everything, but I need to take you in there. What I don't know why, but I need to take you in there." So he took me in one of the um, pyramids, and I went into the main tomb of where you know the king or the pharaohs, whatever, was laid out there. Is a like a block. He said, "This is where you know a mummy is laid of the great king." And I looked around; the whole walls were just filled with alchemy symbology, and it's just like they came to me and says, "You remember this? You remember that? This is what this does. This is what this did, and everything." And I said, "Okay." And so I started thinking. I said, "These symbols are same symbols that we have on our hieroglyphs back home. For like upside down triangle, water. Why is water there? It's spirit. And when I studied with the Hopi people, they were talking about the blue and red kachina, which was, same thing. Blue kachina up north was upside down triangle. Red kachina was south, which is right side triangle, and it becomes a Merkaba. And so I studied more into that. And so I I practiced my modalities, and I shared with a different lot of different cultures. And when I started sharing it, you know, it seems like I started gaining more and more. And I remember when I was in Egypt, we stayed at Holiday Inn Sphinx, and about 2 blocks down is where Pharaoh, not Pharaoh, Sphinx is laid out there, and where um, let's see, yeah, right in front of the parade alley is where it was, and so I was sitting there one evening, just trying to meditate, and it's just like somebody came behind me and just like laid hands on me, and I said, "Okay," and started talking Egyptian to me, and telepathically, and I said, "I cannot understand you. You're gonna have to tell me." And he says, "I am part of you, and you are part of me, because I've been to I belong with your tribe, and your tribe belongs to me. Everything, she was trying to make it as one." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Which one are you? Because we have so many." I said, "Tell me about Achian Latapa." And I said, "Okay, that's the hawk with knife wings." He said, "That's my son." And when she said that, I said, "You're Matlokatsiki." He says, "Yes, that's how you call me, but I am Isis." I said, "Wow, wow." I didn't know much about her, but I knew who she was. And she says, "You will continue your journey everywhere." And so I said, "Okay." So, I went to India, I went, all over in the Middle East. And when I was out there, I didn't go with the crowd. I always went with the village. And because after Egypt, we went to Israel. When I got to Israel, I didn't. They got us this nice hotel to stay at. Well, I didn't stay there. I moved. I said I moved on, and I stayed with this one family in Haifa. And I said, Why am I here in Haifa?" I said, "You need to go up Mount Carmel." And I said, "Okay." So I rode the train up to Mount Carmel, and I started looking around. I said, "Why am I up here?" I mean, I always ask questions why when I meditate. Why? And they said you need to go over here, and you need to go over there. And so I went. You know, I went, and I said, "You can stop here. You can stop here, and just wait. This is not safe for you to go any further." And I said, "Okay." And when I looked at the sign, it says the Den of Pawn. I said, "Okay." So I said, Den of Pawn. So it's the den of Satan when you break it down. The den of Pawn. Pawn is Satan. I said, "Okay." So you just stop here. Why am I here then? I said, because when Jesus was standing here, he asked, "Who am I?" And Peter said, "You are the Son of the living God." And I said, "Yeah." He says, that's where faith started for the Christian or for Jesus's followers. Peter was the first one to have faith because Jesus said, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood could not identify me, but you were identified me through the Spirit." Because all the others said, you are Elijah, you are John the Baptist, you are this, you're that. And I said, well, I studied all this, and I don't quite necessarily, go to the Bible, but I use a lot of references from the Bible, and I use a lot of references from the Emerald tablets. And so as I went along, and going through life, I can't count how many people come to me and help and all this kind of stuff. So, but I did what I could. I'm doing what I can, and I do a lot. I don't do the healing. I'm just a vessel. I connect with the Creator and Mother. And I, my class that we're teaching right now, I teach native alchemy because the power of alchemy symbology, which I break down the medicine wheel, and I will explain to you all about the medicine wheel, right quick. The medicine wheel, well, I think I got a picture of it somewhere over here, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a circle with a plus sign in it. The circle is a divine feminine. The plus is a divine masculine. It's got four colors in there, which is red, black, white, and yellow. And according to the Hopi prophecy, at one point, we were all one people. And though that red, black, white, and yellow are the four skin colors of the world. That doesn't mean, you're this race, you're this ethnic, you're this. No, those are the four skin colors of the world. Also, those are the four body fluids in your body. And the elemental squares that is in there is the four corners. Where's the four corners? New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. And that's got a big significant impact for that. And those tablets, those four tablets went out. And now, just here recently, I got two of them. The people that are bringing it contacted me for out of no reason. They said, "You need to help us get to Hopi." I said, "For what?" I think the guy that here recently been talking to me, he said, "I think I may have the white tablet. It's got all kinds of writings on it, and I don't understand. It was given to me by my great grandpa, who no longer is in existence. And now this part is telling me that I need to bring it south." And he said, "I started from Michigan and I'm here." And then I found out about the Sununu tribe who has the black tablet in Africa. And I don't know, about maybe 2 months ago, they walked across Africa with their tablet, got on a canoe, and they're paddling across the Atlantic Ocean. They're not going to use a boat or anything to fly or something. They're paddling across the ocean. is what I heard last. I said, okay. And of course, the Hopi has the red one. So those three that I've identified. Now, the yellow one, the Hopi say that the Tibet is at Tibet because I said, well, why you all say that? He says, because if here's the world, he said, here's Hopi. If you put a screw in all the way across, you come out at Tibet. And the Tibet word for sun is a Hopi word for moon. And the Hopi word for moon is a Tibet word for sun. And they have the secret handshake when they come. I said, wow. And, the prophecies, native prophecies, does not say anything about the world ending. It doesn't say anything, but it's just going to, like, have a pole shift, like the Great Flood or the Great Ice Period, something like that. And, we have oral history that even talks about the time in hieroglyphs, about the time when we lived with the dinosaurs, because our hieroglyphs have little people with big monsters on them, dinosaurs and all that.
Mm.
Even space beings. Our hieroglyphs has space beings on there. And that's what Clifford was trying to use as a I guess saying to telling the people that you need to raise their vibration because they're coming to protect Mother Earth, you know, and Mother Earth will take care of itself, but they're just coming to take care of it. And one day I said, okay, I need, I'm hard headed. I'm sorry, but I just have to say, show me. And and then I read about CERN and the opening ceremony that they had for CERN. I watched. I said, that's all dark. That's all dark, and their main thing is to create that dark matter. And having contact with the space beings, they said it's not going to happen. And I said, okay, it's not going to happen. Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you then. And sure enough, if you notice, CERN was shut down for a while. It just been reopened. I don't know if you know much about it, but that big scientific project got shut down, and they don't know who and everything. And as I was growing up, my elders used to tell me, you know, these younger generation are going to have more knowledge to them, education wise. They're going to get more educated. They're going to have more educational power. And they think education is power. And they're going to try to come over and rule everything. But understand one thing, education is taught by the books. Those books are written by individuals. And those books may have, some kind of a personal information in there that they want to change. So those books are not accurate. Our oral history. Now, if it resonates with you, you can take it. They always say that. If it resonates, take it. So I said, our oral history, our knowledge is sharing with us throughout the year. What we experience is sharing the knowledge with you. So I said, okay, I'm going, you know. By the way, he said, both education and knowledge is not powerful. I said, why do you all say that? He said, what's powerful is when you implement it. When you implement your knowledge, you'll be powerful. I said, okay. And so I went on and, I studied with various tribes. My elders, when I talk about my elders, they're Hopi, Navajo, Acoma. They're all different tribes. I just don't concentrate on Zuni and because I'm not ethnocentric to where I study around the world, you know, to where I'm open to what they are teaching. And when I did the far work in India, I went up and down. The guru stopped and looked at me and says, "Whoa, come here." I said, "Yes. Did I do something wrong?" He said, "No. Sit right next to me." And I kept asking why. I mean, did I do something wrong? Am I going to be punished or what? But he says, "We never had anybody do that." He looked at the bottom of my feet. He says, "Wow, not even a hop spot, nothing." He said, "How'd you do it?" I said, "Well, I just told myself I'm going to go across and come back. It's done." And I did it. And so, that's just one of the things I did out there. And they were really surprised. Even no matter where I go, I open my mind and I tell people, I said, I'm not the healer. I connect with the creator and Mother Earth. And when I meditate, I said, when you meditate, the first thing you need to do when you want to connect, raise your hands up, bring that universal energy to Mother Earth. Because when we do that, we're nurturing Mother Earth. And see, a lot of people don't meditate. When they meditate, they sit there in a lotus position and all that. No, raise your hands up. Because I tell people, when you ground, if you want to experience grounding, go outside, put your feet on dirt, and raise your hands up and take deep breaths. But be careful because that energy is so strong, it'll knock you out. I've had people stand straight up and about the third breath, boom, just fall on flat up, flat fall over. And I said, "Are you okay?" I told you, if you once you feel it, and I mean you will feel the energy come through your arms. Once it gets to your solar plexus, stop, sit down. That way you don't fall over like that. But no, some people are hard headed. They're gonna try it all the way, but I said when they do that, I said, I try to tell you, slow down, you know, and all these things. When I teach my native alchemy, it's like the chakras. The first three chakras are earthly chakras, which is the same with native. You know, I do, is the third one. I feel is the second one. I am is the first one. I am is my body. Who am I in this earthly being? And you have to, and I go in real in deep depth about that, about who you really are. And and then once you find out what your awakening mission is, then you go into the west, which is water. Water is spirit. That's when you start working on with your spirit. You're done working on the body. Now it's time to work on your spirit. And when you work on your spirit, and in the seventh layer of consciousness, spirit is about you know relationships, which is water is emotion and all this. And you got to work on your emotion, your relationships, and all that. Got to clear everything out. Forgive everybody and just say, okay, I'm free. I no longer worry about this. I no longer worry about that. I love my people, but I forgive them all. You know, it's time for me to go up next, which is white, which is north, which is fire, energy. And that's where when your spirit and your body, everything's a trinity. Three things become one thing, your mind, body, and soul. So you work on your body and your soul to get to the esoteric level of the mind. And when you go into the heart chakra, which is I love, in the prayer consciousness, and in the chakras, it's the vibration, and you know, and in the seven layers of consciousness, is the transformation. Once you get to that point, you start seeing with your vibration being so high, everything happens as I say out of the ordinary. And when that happens, people say, you know, just when we were getting ready to move up here to Pennsylvania, the guy that was moving us, he walked up to me and says, I feel some good energy from you. Can I share something with you? I said, sure. Go ahead, tell me what you want to show me. He says, do you believe in Bigfoot? I said, well, yeah. I mean, I don't see why not. He says, I'm going to show you something that's going to surprise you. He pulled out his phone, went to the pictures. He had pictures of Bigfoot that he encounters out in the woods every night. He said, I go out there every night because he calls me out. If I don't come out, he's going to hound me until I get out there. And I don't know what he's telling me, but he's not afraid of me. It took him a while, but now I can go up to him close enough to where, you know, a lot of people say he stinks, he smells, and all. He doesn't. I mean, I've seen his family. I've seen, it all. He said, in fact, I asked him if I could cast his footprint. He's got a cast footprint about maybe 26 inches long that he saw a nice clean footprint. So he took some plaster out there and he made it up and poured out there and got that porn mold out of his footprints. I said, wow. He showed me all them pictures. I said, now, what is he trying to? I said, all you have to do, learn to meditate, keep your vibration up. No, he's not going to come up to you and say, okay, you need to do it. No, he's not. Telepathic communication. You need to work on that. That is, your fifth chakra, your fifth level, you know, and that is your throat, the blue ray, you know. And with the blue ray, my elders taught me, a word is not spoken, but yet there is communication. So that tells me that communicate, mind. And then, I mean, when I teach my class, I teach all this. And I tell people, I said, okay, one of the examples I give them, I know people get tired of this example, but I can tell you right now, I said, stick your tongue out, open your mouth, stick your tongue out. And I'm going to tell you something. I got a lemon in my hand. Stick your tongue out and let me put that lemon drop in your mouth right now. And are you ready? And then I said, no, I decided not to. I said, did your mouth get watery? Yeah. I said, why? Because I connected with you energetically. And your mouth reacted, your body reacted of what I was going to do, but I didn't do it. But yet your body reacted. That's just one of the little examples I give. I give other examples to where you can say, a lot of people that go to my course, they have a big aha moments like that. Wow, and other things that I teach, like your vision, what about vision? I said, you got three visions. I said, what's that? It says, well, your direct vision, your peripheral vision, and your third eye. And I teach them how to practice with those. Because some days, when you're nice in a dark room watching TV and everything, all of a sudden something black flies by. Well, your peripheral vision caught it. And when you try to look, it's gone before you look. Why? Because when you look at it, by the time your eyes focus, it's going to move away, get away to where you can't see it. But if you sit there and watch TV and you see it go by, you ignore it, it's going to go by again, and you ignore it, it's going to slow down and slow down. And when it slows down enough, you can say, what do you want? And it's going to stop. Because every time, what I was taught in many different cultures, that when you expose the dark, you defeated them. They have to obey you. Because before they come after you, they have to inquire before they come after you. So if you say, what do you want? They have to tell you, because you caught them. So this is one of the things that I teach them about it. Even, so what about your third eye? How do you see your third eye? Well, you close your eyes. Close your eyes and let somebody come walk behind you. And you see people walk behind you. And then when the person is not in the right mind towards you, when he walks by, you can feel that cold air come across. We say, okay. And I tell people, our hands, these are the most sensitive parts. Our palms and the bottom of our feet, the most sensitive. You can scratch me up here and I won't tickle or laugh, but you scratch me right here, you tickles right there, but not up here, not over here, not over here, nowhere but under on my palm, bottom of my feet, because that's our connection. Universal energy comes through our palm. We are like a battery, positive going to Mother Earth, coming out. And that's why we ground. But the government's pretty smart, trying to stop us from helping Mother Earth. What do? Put rubber soles on our shoes, you know. So barefoot, you raise your hands up and you connect. It goes to Mother Earth. You help Mother Earth that way. And you know, this is some of the things that I go real in depth. And when people want to, I got mentorship open right now. When people want to come to my mentorship program, I tell them, you have to be committed to yourself, not me, but to yourself, to learn what I want to share with you. Because this is not magic. We all have these gifts. And, of course, the religious people think I'm a voodoo man, I'm this, I'm that. And I said, well, if you think, I always throw the Bible back at him. I said, if you think I'm this, let me ask you a question. You said, do you believe in your Bible? Yeah. Let's open book to Matthew chapter 10, verses, 7 through 13. What does it say? Jesus said, freely I give you authority to heal the sick, raise the dead, and to remove all dark spirits. Who was he talking? Oh, he's talking to the disciples. Well, define disciple. If you're going to be a preacher or whatever like that, aren't you a disciple for him? So let's look at that. And there's they can't refute it. Just like I tell them, I am the source. They say, what do you mean you are the source? I am the source. You mean you tell me you are God? I said, I don't believe in God. I believe in the Creator, the Father. How many times did Jesus call God God? He didn't. He said, my Father, your Father, our Father. He always said that when he described the Creator above. So I said, now, in your Bible, I was telling you, in your Bible, John 14:20, what does it say? It says, I am in the Father, I am in you, and you in me. So we are one. Again, the Trinity. Three things become one thing. One thing becomes three things. You can break it down from generation, your three things to one thing and all that. And when you connect the dots, it's a DNA strand. A lot of people, what can I say? Like I said, I can go really in depth about a lot of things. And
That was an amazing, introduction there. I think you just spoke for like 30, 40 minutes and you just dropped some amazing knowledge on us there. And it all is flowed really well and makes a lot of sense. And where can people find your mentorship courses and maybe like if you have a website and stuff like that?
we do have a website called Healthy and Harmonious Lifestyle.com. That's our website. And the reason why we name it Healthy and Harmonious Lifestyle.com is because Kim, my partner, she does a lot of, chakra teaching, meditation teachings, and healthy eating right now.
Which is all important, right?
It's organic. I'm trying. I am trying my best. But, you know, she has proven to me that organic eating is healthier. So I am trying to eat healthier. Now, I like a little kid, throw a little tantrum and she'll okay, all right, I'm gonna look the other way and I'll buy me a cake. Small piece of cake and I eat it, but because it's sad how the chemicals and crap they put in the food nowadays. And
Yeah, it's unnatural food and it spikes off dopamine receptors in your brain, and it makes you addicted to it. But anyway, Audrey, what were you gonna say?
So I want to a little bit backtrack back to the tablets that you were talking about. Do you think with these different tribes around the world that have these tablets are somehow wanting to come and connect with you as a way of uniting all the tribes together to bring back all this lost knowledge and just reunite them and say, hey, we're teaching all the same things, but they have different names and stuff.
Okay, the tablets that are coming together, the red, black, white, and yellow tablets, are teaching tablets according to the Hopi prophecy and other prophecies. They are teaching tablets because when the if the earth decides to flip over like it done before, you know, we need to learn how to survive. We are basically feeling just a little bit of a, you know, yesterday or this past couple days, couple weeks, you know, um, we had that Hurricane Debbie come through in our neck of the woods. We lost power, we lost Wi-Fi, and everybody's panicking. Oh no, 911's out. You got to call now. They're panicking. You know, when Texas had an ice storm, 60 people died, and I said, why? You go back home, 60 people died because they didn't have electricity or running water. And I said, why? You go back home, grandma and grandpa live out in the middle of nowhere. They don't have running water. They don't have electricity, but they're healthy and happy. You know, this is part of the tablets. They're here to teach survival. And see, I was taught all that. I can go out. Yeah. I tell people say, well, I can go kill a deer and I can eat off the deer. Now, I say, yeah, but can you process that deer to where you'll have meat for a while without a refrigerator? Well, no, that's impossible. Why is it impossible? When back home, when somebody kills a big elk or deer and there's plenty of meat, they don't put it in the refrigerator. They slice it thin and pepper it or put chili powder on it, whatever, and they dry it. And when they get ready to eat it, they grab that dry meat, beat it up, get a little grease, fry it up, put water in, put flour. There you go. Got gravy, deer gravy. It's a meal, with biscuits. But, you know, the other sad thing about back home is that we used to be self sufficient when I was growing up. But I'm saying that is that when I was growing up, man, we was either one sheep camp where we tend to the sheep, we were sheep herders, or two, if you stayed home, you get to go out to the farm and work at the farm. The whole back of my mom's house, everything, everybody was planting, all natural. We had watermelon, we had squash, we had all, and we all helped each other. The community helped each other. It wasn't just one family. No. Everybody helped. I get woken up at 6 in the morning, Saturday morning, say, give me a hoe or a Pulaski and say, go on, go help clean a ditch, irrigation ditch, or go help so and so with hoeing their fields. You know, go help them plant their fields. And when we plant, you just don't follow a tractor and throw the seeds in. You get a digging stick. After the ground being plowed and prepared and everything, you get a digging stick and you get a sack of corn on beside you, and you only put 3 corn per hole. You get your digging stick, step on it, pull it out. You pray to the seed. Thank you, seed, for allowing me to plant you. Thank you, mother, for nurturing my seed. Thank you, Father, for bringing us, rain. You talk to them as you plant. And when you get into that meditative state of planting, you don't realize how much you planted until it's all done. Then you say, wow. And our grandparents used to say, well, we'll see how lazy you were planting the corn Because if they come out in big bushes, you're lazy. You put more than 3 corn in there. But if you did it right and you're not afraid to work, your field line is going to be straight and it's going to come out like 2 to 3, stalks per every 6 inches. And, those are the kind of things that we used to do. Nowadays, you go back home, nobody is planting, which is sad. Everybody's in a rush, 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 and we're losing our oral history and traditions. It's not being passed down, and that's what Clifford was trying to tell him. First of all, he was trying to help people raise their consciousness so they can be awoke to see, yes, this we need to do this. Yes, we need to do that. And if you just like he says, if you could just save one person awake, that's good. He did his job. He's doing his job. And that's all he wanted. He don't want thousands of them come hurting him. And no, one person at a time, he said. And that was his mission, is to make sure that when people are woke, they continue the awakening, because that's once people get awoke, like I say, they want to do this from point A to point Z, but you got to go step by step to learn. And that's the way I teach. I go step by step. And that's why my mentorship starts out with 6 months. And after 6 months, if you are really committed, I go on further. And the first 6 months is the ground or the lower chakras, which is I am, I feel, I do, up to your heart chakra. I love, vibration, transformation. And then I go into the esoteric realm, because if you look at a Merkaba, again, upside down triangle, right side up, where they meet, that's a Merkaba. And if you look at the upside down triangle, it's above the bottom one. Fire is down here. Fire is energy. On the bottom, when you start, you're raising your energy to get to that transformation part. And once you transform, you're shooting out to the universe esoterically. That's where shape shifting, you know, remote viewing, astral traveling, and all this come into play when you start working on your fifth, sixth, and seventh. You know, and people like to say, "Well, I astral travel, I do that." Okay, when you do that, who's taking care of your avatar while you're out there traveling? Who's taking care of your avatar? Because you're going to come back to it. And if you look at it, remember, upside down, that means we're a descendant from the universe. Even says that in the Emerald Tablets. On the tablet, Freedom of Space, it says, look into the set your eyes upon the cosmos, meaning that look up what's up there. And then it says, a man that comes to Earth is a descension from the universe. Because once we get done with our avatar on Earth of what we need to do to help Mother Earth, once this avatar comes and goes, again, we descend back into the universe. We're an infinite being. We're powerful infinite beings. And people don't realize that. You know, Christianity teaches, oh, you're either going to heaven or you're hell. Just as, remember, we are one. The Father, you know, we are one. The Trinity, we are one. People have to understand. Don't fearmonger. I don't ever fearmonger anybody. Nobody deserves to be a fearmonger. That's control, trying to get control. And you can't do that. Not in my tribe. We don't do that. And we respect the divine feminine. We are a matriarchal society. And with the alchemy symbology, why is that so important? Again, with the medicine wheel, we got our elemental square of northeast, southwest, but there are 7 directions, up and down, and the 7th one is us. We are the 7th direction. And then, of course, like I said, the first circle is the divine feminine, the outer circle. is the cosmic womb. And if you look at, you know, the past people, Leonardo da Vinci, Truvia Man, what was he trying to tell us when he drew that Truvia Man? He said, "You are a star," meaning that you are from a light being from the cosmos. That's Truvia Man. But you look at everything in there: fire, water, you know, the elemental square, the cosmic womb, the divine feminine, divine masculine. Everything is in that Truvia Man. And if you stand up, head, bottom of your feet, and you draw a circle, where's that dot? Your belly button. That's how you were connected to your mother. And your mother was connected to her mother, to their mother, to the big, you know. And that's why we respect our divine feminine. Because, you know, as I was saying before, many times, the men that are in the religious society, oh, we don't allow women, we don't allow, even back home, oh, we don't allow women in our kiva. Why? I asked him two questions. I said, let me tell you something. Let me ask two questions as to why and tell you why we need to put women in the kivas. He said, okay, why? I said, okay, the kiva is a circle, right? Yeah. How do you get in the kiva? Not through the doors around it. No. You climb up, you go in the middle, and you go down into the kiva, right? So, yeah. But if you look at the circle with a dot on it, in alchemy, that symbol is gold. The divine feminine is a gold piece, you know. And again, that middle is your navel button. And second of all, I tell them, if it wasn't for the women, you won't be here. I haven't seen a man give birth yet.
The woman's womb is a portal, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
And they all look
portal needs to
they
be
all
on.
look at me like, what are you telling? Why are you messing with our head? I said, I'm not messing with your head. I'm just telling you the truth. You need to open your eyes and learn the truth. You know, and like one of my Navajo teachers that I listened to and study from, you know, one of the things he said is that nowadays we are losing our traditional ways. And those that are awakened have to start using their conscience to try to pick up what we what little we have. Try to pick up and live what little we have. And which is true. Even back home. Things are changing. And I tell I got my nephew that's highly involved with the with his Kiva group. And tell him, I said, that's not true. You know, they were going to do this. And I said, no, you tell them this and see what happens. And he went back and said, my uncle says this. Okay. It didn't happen. He says, how do you know about that? I said, I don't know anything. I'm just passing down to you what the elders passed down to me. These are not my sayings. These are what was passed down to me. And, so, I can't, you know, I know um, my sharing of knowledge, I enjoy this because I see people transform. And that's basically my whole goal is to see them transform because right now, look how crazy United States is. And I tell them, in my tribal alliance page, I give out like a little 10, 15-minute messages, whatever I am led to share. And I said out and I've been telling them, I said, with all this craziness going on, two things: stay connected with the universe, Mother Earth, and second, ground yourself. Ground yourself to where you keep your vibrations above the third dimension. Go in the fourth, fifth dimension. Stay at that level. That way you don't be part of it, what's going on over there. And don't worry about it. Don't worry about tomorrow. Because tomorrow's not guaranteed. Don't worry about the past because you're never going to bring it back. Just complete your mission here on Mother Earth. When it's said and done, you rise up, the avatar rests, your spirit is infinite being will go to the next dimension. you know, and wherever you left off back there, where you pick up. And I've seen, yeah, I see it. I hear a lot of people talk to me about their Montauk, their SSP program and everything. Yeah, it's out there, but leave it out there right now. Let's concentrate on what we need to do here on Mother Earth. Because when we ascend, we might go back to the thing if you allow yourself. If you allow yourself, you might go back. Remember, words are powerful. You're either speaking white magic or black magic, you know? So I tell people, I said, yes, it's out there. The experience is out there, but, you know, let's take one step at a time. We're here for a reason. We volunteered to come. We just need,
Concentrate on the moment and the mission at hand.
okay,
That's what you're saying, right? Concentrate on the moment, concentrate on what you need to do here.
yes, at the moment. And then, again, we're infinite beings. So if you know, which I know, those people that talk to me about that, I know that's what happened to them out there or wherever. But you know, let's worry about now, today. Because when the time comes, you can either go back to it or you can go somewhere else. You know, that's why they always say in the native way, there are two paths you can go. You can follow your mission. When you get to the point where it wise off, you have a choice which one to take. Just like we had a choice to come down here. You know, and you know, sometimes some people need to get it out. I said, okay, I'll listen, but I'm not going to say anything. And some people are convincingly convinced that and I don't disagree with them because I believe that's what they experiencing or that's what they experienced. It's just like these people that are dragged into sex slavery. You know, when they get out of it, I tell them, okay, once you get disconnected, let it go. Go live a life, a happy life that you are guaranteed when you came here. And I still got one person that keeps calling me and says, "Hey, thank you, thank you." I said, "Don't thank me. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a vessel. Learn to connect with mother and father. Learn to meditate. Learn to stay connected. That's who you need to thank. You know, because I'm just direct you to help you. Whatever they tell me, I do it. And a lot of people say, "Well, how do you know this? How do you know that?" I said, "Well, the word foha. If you ever look at the study of Electric Bridge, third episode, and it says it many places, which is in the Emerald Tablets. The first one of the first sentences on there, it says that which is above corresponds with that which is below. That which is below corresponds with that which is above to bring that one thing, magic. What is that magic? When you connect with father and mother, yes, it's going to happen. And that's what I share the knowledge of, that magic. And, you know, in that scientific electric bridge, episode 3, I believe was he talks about Fohat. They talk about how you can use universal energy to bring earthly matter. Ground to earth, bringing that universal energy, and that earthly matter will appear. That's the magic. Thought taught that. You know,
Can you touch briefly on? You talked before the interview started. We had a 5-minute little introduction, and you talked a little bit about how Thoth went around the world, and you talked about how we found ancient Egyptian like artifacts and stuff like that, the mounds of Cahokia and things like that, or was it the
Hotel
serpent?
mounds. Yeah, they're finding some Egyptian relics there. It's all some Egyptian relics. Now, I've read. Um, an early explorer back in the 1800s, Powell, walked through Grand Canyon, saw a little cave up there, went in there and said he saw an Egyptian village. Well, back then they didn't have any cameras or anything, so they hoisted him down as far as his ropes could go, and he said he saw an Egyptian village that housed about 5,000 people, and he got a few relics, took it to Smithsonian, and tried to say, "Hey, this is my proof." They took it away from him, said, "Stay away from there."
Yeah, people try to go there now. That you can find YouTube videos, and if you try to go there to that area of the Grand
That
Canyon,
is blocked off.
black helicopters will show up.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
even Kincaid in the early 1900, 1903 or 1908, something like that, he went and found that place and went in and did the same thing. But they tried to debunk him, and Arizona, I think Arizona Republic newspaper, put in an article about that. There's an article about him going in there and seeing what he saw, and yeah. Now the natives are allowed to go there. Zuni, Hopi, we do a migration. There's a migration story about that in a YouTube video, about Zuni migration going into that cave, you know, and our migration story gets real deep. I mean, we came from the fourth underworld, the four other worlds that were above us, you know. Again, we were in the fourth underworld when that meteorite hit the Yucatan Peninsula. And when it hit there, we were in the fourth underworld to where, you know, the ant people and the mantis took care of us. And when we do the esoteric migration out there, we actually meet with them. I was there with them 2 years ago. It was an eye opening, but it was an esoteric visit into our migration site. Now they physically do a migration site, but they can't go into that cave, but they just go beside it. They say their prayers, they say their songs, whatever, and they move on. But the
there's
government.
also some wild stuff. When people can look it up, it's public knowledge. You can find a picture of a rock formation in that area that looks like a sphinx, and a lot of the area is named after Egyptian stuff, like the Valley of Kings, and people can look into that. It's so there's some sort of strange connection to Egypt in that area, and it's just proof that we had a global society for a long time, and the idea that a global society is new is wrong and false. We've actually had contact with different cultures across the world for thousands of years, and I really appreciate you sharing the wisdom and knowledge that you have with us. It was incredibly powerful testimony.
Well, again, you can find me on Facebook, One Nation Tribal Alliance, or our website is healthyandharmoniouslifestyle.com. All one word, healthy and harmonious lifestyle, because we not only want to take care of you spiritually, but also physically. Eating healthy spirit, goes a long way on what you want to do on your mission. That's how you got to be. So
Well,
I know you all got questions, so I stop for some questions now.
yeah, let's see if we have anybody in the chat that
Audrey?
wants to say anything too. We have guests. But yeah, Audrey, if you want to ask anything, and then also the guests or the viewers, if the viewers have any questions too.
Okay. Well, Audrey, got any question?
So I know that you're talking about the different teachings that you had while growing up and stuff. What would you say would be the most important teaching that everybody can apply to themselves?
The I am. I am the first part of our native 7 layers of consciousness, finding out who you really are. Because we are programmed from the time we come out of the chute, from our mama, we are starting, we're programmed. We got to get out of that program. And once you awaken, then you have to really find out who I am, your infinite being, you know, because your avatar is going to stay here on Mother Earth, but your infinite being is going to move on. So when we talk about I am, that is the most powerful because, that starts your connection with Mother Earth. That starts your vibration. How do your spiritual consciousness starts to rise once you start working on your I am. And because I tell people, if you allow your spirit to control your body, you know, you can heal yourself. You can go a long way. You can, go up in the higher realm, the higher dimensions, and you're gonna start seeing a lot of things, you know. And once you get to the I am, you go to the spirit. You gotta get those two working together. Your emotion, your relationships. Make peace with everybody. Because you don't want to have any hidden emotions when you are doing any kind of healing work or trying to raise your vibration, because that will drop you down real quick if you have any hidden emotion, because that's a negative thought. And so that will be the most important start. I mean, to start out on yourself. And that was, to me, I did a lot of fasting, and fasting is not necessarily starving yourself. It's not necessarily starving yourself. It's taking away something that is convenient to you. Like I tell people, I said, you know, turn your cell phone off for 4 days and put it. Oh no, I can't do that. I gotta keep track of my mom. I gotta keep track of my kids. I got, you know, okay, you're not ready yet. You're not ready to raise your vibration. You know, you're still thinking earthly stuff. You know, yeah, it's good to worry about your kids and your mom and all that, but that's why we have telepathic communication. You know,
which they cut us all off from to replace it with this technology.
Yeah.
Which is something that I talk about a lot, and it's a huge part of what I'm trying to educate people on. So thank you for that. We actually have a question from a guest here, a viewer.
Aaron, how you doing?
Has anyone else found the other Hopi legend rocks? I keep mine close at hand always.
A lot of people have those Hopi rocks, and some of them are really the story of you. The rock that the Hopi rock that you found, Aaron, is that you need to communicate and get connected with him. What is he trying to tell you? I know you have some symbols on there. What are those symbols saying? It's not necessarily reading it. It's, again, connect with it and it will tell you. They didn't say anything about, again, back in the Bible, Jesus said the rock's going to cry out. So the rocks will communicate with you. They're part of Mother Earth. So whatever symbols is on there, meditate, connect with it, and it will tell you what it wants to tell you. Because if you take it to the Hopi people, they're going to tell you, okay, this is your rock. What kind of message are you bringing us because with your rock? And it's just like people were telling me about the 4 stones, the red, white, and blue stones. I tell them, I said, look, these rocks, these tablets are to teach. I know you don't understand yet, but connect with it. Connect with it. And they'll tell you what you need to teach. you know, because it's all about survival. Those 4 stones are about survival. And that's one thing we can't do nowadays. You know, I can't because, when I used to teach survival, one of the biggest question was that how do you know what's safe to eat out there in the woods? I said, how do you know it's not safe? I mean, how do you know it's safe to eat without hurting your body? I said, real easy. If it's like a mushroom and you want to see if it's poisonous or not, what do they do their allergy tests? In your elbow, right? Inside your elbow. You rake that across. If it reacts, don't eat it. Wash it off. But if it doesn't react, it's safe to eat. Simple. But I can't hear you.
That's that ancient wisdom that we had you come on the show to share with us right there.
Things like this, people have overlooked. Easy stuff. Like I said about your vision. You know, people. I say you got 3 visions. No, I don't. I said, okay. Just like communication, word is not spoken. When I used to teach about communication, I said, okay, put 2 people in front of each other, talk to each other without saying a word. Y'all just looked at each other. We can't do it. We can't do it. So why not? You can communicate big time without saying a word. How do you know? I've done it many times. I can talk to a deaf person, not only using sign language, because I'm interpret sign language for deaf people. I know that. I speak 7 different languages, by the way.
Wow.
So not only when they do sign language, what is it? Gestures. Gestures, right? And read your lips. Move your lips like you're saying something without saying a word. And because a lot of deaf people know how to read lips. I learned it for a while, but just got to a point to where I said, I'm being nosy because I can go to a restaurant, look across and see people talking, and I can hear the conversation by reading their lips. And I just said, no, I'm too nosy about that. No, I need to get that out of my head. So I quit. Or get a pencil and paper, write it out. But see, people can't, they don't, they don't think about how to do it. They just have one thing, voice. It's just like if the cell phone goes out, how you gonna communicate? How you gonna talk? But these young kids don't know how to use a rotary dial. you know, I mean, my daddy used to say, "Keep a dime in your pocket. If you need me, there was 2 telephone booths in the whole village of Zuni. If you need me, call me." And it cost a dime to call back then. So, yeah, I mean, fasting doesn't necessarily saying, like I said, starving yourself. Put away stuff that you can do without. See if you can do without. Put your car keys up. I tell people back home, I said, put your car keys up. Zuni's not that big, yeah. Hospital's 3 miles away. Grandma used to walk to the hospital for a doctor's appointment and walk back. Why can't you do it? Oh, it's now you load up your kids and take them to school. School's just around the block. Well, we used to walk all the way across. And I was telling them, I said, man, I tell my kids, I said, I know, Daddy, back in the day, you had burlap wrapped around your legs in 4 feet of snow. You go all the way to the school and find out that school's closed for the day. And you have to walk all the way back on, Daddy. I said, yep. No. But my kids, they said, well, get in the car and drive me to school. I said, no, walk, or there's a bus, you know. But they never ever, you know, said that was the wrong thing for me to teach them. My daughter, when she gets a flat tire, she get out there and fix. One day she was driving, She says, Daddy, I got a flat tire. Where you at? I'm at such and such place. I said, okay. I went up there, pulled right behind her, turned on my bright lights. I said, go ahead and fix it. State police came by and yelled at me. Why are you letting her fix it? Why aren't you helping her? Well, if I help her, I'm not helping her. But if she does it herself, I'm helping her. I'm teaching her.
Yeah, that's a value that we have forgotten in the society. Like, that's actually something I can think about. Like, I remember this. Like back in the day, this is a good example of that. It has to do with tires. I ride a bicycle a lot now. It's something that I stopped doing for years, and I started up again recently. And I never really changed my tire out myself when I would get a flat. I always had someone help me do it, like a friend or someone would always be there and do it for me. And like I had a neighbor, this guy Ed, he would fix my flat for me and so I finally had to teach myself to do it. And because I kept on getting flat tires on this bike I had. And that's such a valuable thing now, to where if I'm riding and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and as long as I carry a spare inner tube on me or whatever, and my tire goes flat, I can do that myself now. I don't need to go into a bike shop, pay them $15 or whatever it is. It's ridiculous, right? And it's just something that they really are trying to take away from people is the fact that like educating others and knowing how to do things on your own and stuff. That's really a good thing. It's like you said, like they thought you were crazy and like not being good to your daughter for having a teaching moment with her and actually just being a father to her, which is wild to think about, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing about nowadays. Kids expect their parents to do everything for them. But no, that's not the way I was raised. If I wanted something, my dad would say, "Okay, how you gonna get it?" Oh, okay, I guess I got to work for it. All right, you know. But my dad never said no to us. So, and as bad as we were, my dad never laid a hand on us. But mother, oh, never mind. We won't go there. you know,
Is there anything else that either Audrey you want to bring up, or Greg, anything either of you guys want to talk about before we wrap things up here?
No, I think I'm good. I think I learned a lot today.
I did too, Greg. You're such a profound guy, really. You're very wise, and you shared so much knowledge with us. We definitely have to have you on the show again someday in the future. And I definitely highly recommend people check out your website, which is what is your website again? I'll post it in the comments here real quick.
Healthy and harmonious lifestyle.com. And I also have a YouTube channel under One Nation Tribal Alliance and Facebook group on One Nation Tribal Alliance. So
Okay, I'll make a pinned comment in the video of that to make sure people that come and find this video later on will see that right away.
yeah.
And I think that we really kind of covered everything we really need to. We once again we really appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom with us, Greg. It was an absolutely fascinating interview.
Okay. Let me make a couple announcements first.
Okay.
August 19th, we're going to have a full moon ceremony. And to get on that full moon ceremony, it's going to be live. If you want to be part of it, we're going to do it on Zoom. To get the Zoom link, go to our website, healthyandharmoniouslifestyle.com, and put in your email address so we can send you the link. And currently, like I said, we have some classes. One is the native alchemy, about raising your vibration. We got it with chakra class because we're paralleling both of them about how to raise your vibration. And I teach it using the alchemy symbology of the medicine wheel. And Kim uses the 7 chakras. Well, she goes more than 7, but the 7 main chakras. So we teach it in both ways. And there's over 140 modules, and it's just once you get this class and everything, once you you know, take this class. The class doesn't expire. Once you purchase it, it's yours. You get your own username, your password, and unlimited access. You can, and like I say, it's got 140 modules, so that's a lot of information. You know, and I bring in the emerald tablets, and I bring in all kinds of stuff on my native alchemy part, and she uses her chakras, and all kinds of meditation techniques and all this kind of stuff. So, we both combine it to raise people's vibration. So we have that class available. And my mentorship, I used to charge. Don't let anybody get scared. 1,500 for 6 months. I got it on special this month. $1.11. If you want to go for it. And like I tell people, make sure you're ready to commit yourself into learning. Because again, it will show if you really are wanting to dive deep into this rabbit hole. Because once we learn about everything, like I said, you get into the esoteric realm, you'll know how to take care of yourself. You'll know how to take care of others. You know how to do it safe. You know how not to be afraid of what comes to you, whether it's star beings, Bigfoot, whatever. You won't be afraid of them. You'll be with them. You'll be able to communicate with them. Esoteric communication. Once you learn all about yourself, then you learn about your spiritual part, your infinite being. You know, this was shared down to me, you know, and I'm willing to share this knowledge with people. And there is nothing religious about it. It's all spiritual. It's all spiritual. It's all depend on you, on how you want to level up. So we have these classes. I think Kim just finished up her 30-day meditation challenge to a lot of people, and now she's going to come up with all kinds of challenges like that, which is some are free, some you have to pay a little fee because again we have to pay for a Zoom, we have to pay for this and all that, but again, my mentorship, $1.11, and there is on our website. It says mentorship on the
I
bottom.
want to take you up on that, Greg.
Well,
I think I would like to be one of those people that takes you up on that. I think I would learn a lot from you.
and I do one-on-one. It's not a group setting. It'd be me and you.
Okay.
And I'm on first meeting. I'm gonna ask you a lot of questions just to see where you stand, not only spiritually, but on your mission, whatever your mission is. You got to identify what your mission really is of your infinite being. Not only on the earthly realm, but in the universe. And I use a lot of, you know, Emerald Tablet scriptures, Bible scriptures, and all that because I'm not ethnocentric on just what I've been taught. I try to open your mind to say other people are teaching it this way too. Other cultures are teaching this way. And I was fortunate enough to where they were open enough to where they taught me. The Buddhists taught me, and all them in the Tibet, they taught me. In Africa, South America, Central America, I traveled, and I was in Nicaragua, I was in Costa Rica, El Salvador, I was everywhere. And but now it's time for me to share the knowledge, and go ahead, put it on there. Healthy and harmonious lifestyle. I say I'm gonna get 10, but Kim says I'm gonna get 15. I got 3 or 4 people signed up right now that I know are dedicated enough you know, to follow. Because I got one person that's been with me for 2 years, and he said, I can't stop learning from you. And we do have some testimonies in there about our teachings. So, okay.
Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, and I highly recommend people check out those courses that you offer. And thank you to all of our viewers, both in the present and in the future that will be seeing this as a replay. Thank you for giving your attention to this important information and watching our channel. Thank you, Greg, for being on our show, and Audrey for helping me co-host with this. And yeah, everybody have a great day. And is there something you want to show people real quick here, Greg, before we go?
You know, I was going to say I did have a script to follow because I tend to go sidetrack all many different ways, but um, I did type it all out and print everything out so I don't get carried away and all that. But we never got to it, but that's okay.
We'll have to get to. We can do another interview with you. We'd be more than happy to.
Well, whenever y'all ready, I'm here to, and I think once you start, if once you start taking this mentorship, just get ready to go into rabbit holes,
Believe me, I'm ready.
And,
I'm definitely ready.
all right.
You guys have a good one. I'm gonna end the stream if that's okay. Take care, and everybody have a good day. Goodbye. All right, and we're ending.